Welcome to Between Data and Risk podcast. Today we'll be talking to Mandar Joshi, angel investor, media producer, who will explain to us the concept of integrated incubators and how they benefit startup development. Stay tuned.
If you're a business owner or senior manager, you probably had more than enough about all the wonderful opportunities awaiting you in the era of digitalization.
Whether it is big data, cloud, data science, or whatever buzzword is currently trendy.
If you would like to hear someone dissecting these claims and showing you what it actually takes to improve business processes, you're in the right place.
This is Between Data and Risk, where we discuss real-life examples of what works and what doesn't in the world of business operations.
Hello, I'm Artur Cognition Shared Solution Chief Risk and Strategy Officer, and with me is my co-host, your friendly neighborhood data guy, Dr. Marian.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome to this episode of Between Data and Risk. Today we'll be talking about startup support and investment through integrated incubators. And we're excited to have with us our guest, Mandar Joshi, angel investor and media producer, executive chairman of M Strategy Global, who agreed to share some of his experiences with us. Hello, Mandar.
Hello, Arthur. Hope everything is good.
Great to have you here. So you promote this idea of incubating integrated incubators. You run an integrated incubator. Can you tell us before we start discussing kind of the implications exactly what it is? What's the idea behind an integrated incubator?
Yeah, Arthur. I'm a shareholder of a company called VentureCatalysts, which is today India's largest integrated incubator by number of deals. Through our integrated incubator model, plus the two funds which we have regulated by the Indian regulating body, we have done more than 500 startup investment transactions. So let me take you through what is an integrated incubator model. So usually the startups basically get mentoring through a couple of methods. The first method is accelerator. So when you have an idea, you go to an accelerator and they tell you the first level support of how to convert an innovative idea into a business plan on paper, okay, and how to start the business, but you are still pre-revenue. Mm-hmm. And then you go to an incubator. So people run an accelerator, all people run an incubator. So in incubator, what happens is now you have a business plan, you have a financial model, you have an idea, you are still pre-revenue. Incubator will basically incubate you in your early years, like incubating a baby. You know, when there is a health issue or the baby is weak and so on, we put him or her in incubator. So it is similar that, in earlier months or years, business face a lot of challenges. Challenges are in terms of cash, which is funding. Challenges in terms of customers, which is opening doors to new business opportunities and so on. So this is the job of the incubator, to guide the startup founder through that. And then every startup founder you ask and what he or she wants, the first answer you will get is funding. So as a part of integrated incubator, what we do is we also provide funding. So you are accelerating a business idea, then you are incubating a startup venture, and also you are funding. Now the funding comes through different sources. The funding is through angel investors. So we have a syndication platform where there are more than 1,000 individual angel investors who invest in India. So these are smaller tickets which angel investors can afford to take a risk or to invest in startups. And then we have our own regulated funds to back us up. So both the funds are $100 million each, from where we invest in. So one fund is sector agnostic, the other fund is fintech focused. And there are methods, there are theses of both the funds which are different. So we invest from the fund as well, higher tickets. So you are supported by angel investors with smaller tickets at an earlier stage of your business. When you grow and it is not possible for small angels to support you anymore, the fund comes into picture, and the fund gives you much higher funding. You're talking about $1 million, $2 million, up to $5 million funding per startup. that our funds provide to them. Apart from that, what we have is we also have a company in Bangalore called Incubate Hub. Now, what's the concept of this Incubate Hub? Is you have large corporate, let's say Mercedes. Now, Mercedes wants to do some X innovation in their automobile engine, or let's say some case. Okay, now Mercedes has its R&D department. Mercedes has its research and development department. However, there are a lot of startups in India who might be having this solution ready, available, cheap, fast, and quickly available, basically, for Mercedes. So what Incubate Hub does is it goes to these corporates, and we have more than 100 corporates, large corporates in India. So we go to corporates and we say that, okay, what's in 2023 you want to develop, or what's your agenda for the R&D? Then we break down into pieces. Not that every piece of this we have a solution from our startups, okay, but probably there are 10 pieces, and even if we provide 2 or 3 solutions, they are good to go, right? And then we go to the startups across India, not only our startups, across India, and see who has that solution. What happens here is the startup gets its pilot with Mercedes, which otherwise it would have struggled with small automobile manufacturers and don't know when they will get a pilot to do. It's a privilege for a startup to learn from Mercedes engineers and so on. Mercedes gets their solution very quickly. Now, this is, of course, for the sake of podcast, I'm using Mercedes as a name, and Mercedes is also our client in India, but this is now you can apply across industries. So now this is we call integrated incubator. So you have accelerator, you have incubator, you have angel investor syndicate network. You also have regulated funds, and you also have this access to large corporates to run your pilot projects or prototypes or tests and so on. So this is, we call it as integrated incubator. There are very few integrated incubator across the world which have all these strengths.
That's absolutely amazing. I think it's fine. I know that, in example, in some countries they operated like university accelerators, and like over 95% of the startups which leave such, let's say, incubation period, they die. It's not helping them, let's say, grow or create a sustainable operations. It's just keeping them alive as long as they are, let's say, supported by the institution. And then when the institution plugs
when pulls the plug,
it's just dead. I wonder, like, what's the size of the companies that leave your protection when they are, let's say, ready to go out? So they had this pilot project. You have this couple of founders. They can come up with the brilliant idea. You accelerate them, incubate them, pilot them, and now they are ready to take off. I'm wondering, like, when in such an integrated process you decide, okay, guys, now you are ready to be grown-ups, go and do your stuff.
Okay, good question. So there is no right or wrong answer to this question, one. And secondly, it is not that I will tell the startup founder when he should go to the market. It is his business. It's not my business. So the startup founder will have the confidence that, can I go now to the market? Now, like we said, this kind of prototype or this kind of pilot project, it is a kind of self-assessment for the startup founder as well. That, am I ready? How many questions are coming? Do I need to reiterate? Is this a viable solution for the market? Whether people will pay money for this product, or it is just good to have, nice to have. All these questions are through a brainstorming process. So every startup is different. There is no formula that now you pass grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 10, now you go to university. It's not that way. So every startup journey is different. Sometimes what happens is the startup has two complementary innovative ideas plugged into one startup. So it also happens that one idea is commercialized, one idea goes, while the second idea still needs some kind of iteration. So it is up to startup founder to decide. We guide. So we cannot drive. We can guide that, okay, which direction to take and when to start, when to stop.
Correct.
But so you mentioned that startup founders, they obviously the first thing they want is funding, and that's kind of understandable in the situation they're in. But you mentioned quite a lot of other support, obviously mentoring, guiding through various stages of the company formation growth. How do you identify the needs of specific startups? Because obviously, I think in my kind of experience meeting startup founders, some of them are very very business savvy and they have a good head on their shoulders, but some of them are dreamers who have this vision, and they do require a bit of guiding, a bit of mentoring. So how do you make them realize that there is something else apart from money that is needed to run a business?
So let me start with your sentence where you said that they might be dreamers. So let me give you background. Today, because we are the largest in India, we receive around 1,500 pitch decks every month.
Oh.
1,500 startup pitch decks every month. So we have a team to go through all these startups pitch deck, and there is a curation process. So let's say if we are getting 1,500 startups pitch deck, we are investing probably 7 or 8 startups every month. You're talking about 0.5% of the startups who apply to us are actually getting funding from us and are actually part of our integrated incubation, acceleration, mentoring process, which means that 99.5% startups are filtered out.
I think it
And
answers
how
the
they are
question.
filtered out exactly. So basically, we receive pitches, we analyze pitches, we read through it. There is a team doing that, and then some startups are filtered out at this stage, and then the other ones we do a video call with them. We ask certain questions, they answer, and then this series of video calls goes on for probably 3 or 4 video calls with each startup. And then with each video call the questions become a little bit tougher. We are assessing his understanding about business and so on, and then when the startup passes through this solution, this incubation process, then the startup approaches our investment committee. Now on our investment committee we have very marquee people. So we have ex-director of Facebook, we have ex-director of Yahoo, we have ex-CEO of one of the largest private equity firms in India, and we have other 5. So we have very senior people to whom the startup founder will pitch, and during that process they will assess whether he is a dreamer, whether he is his feet are on the ground, whether he is talking reality, and so on. If he is a dreamer and he doesn't fit in our criteria, it is very easy for us to put him in that 99.5% box. So we actually filter out before funding. It's not that we fund and then we think about, oh, now this startup founder suddenly is a dreamer. Now what do I do? My money, and it doesn't happen that way. So this is, I think this answers your question, or there was another part of your question.
So once you have a startup already on your platform, or you've assessed him as a viable business, but you did mention a mentoring phase and certain requirements that they may find they need once they are on your platform. So I'm just wondering about the level of support that you provide them apart from funding, and how do you guide them so that the funding is actually spent to the best of in the best possible way.
I will try to maybe clarify, because we had a discussion with a fine gentleman early in our podcast. He was a private investor, and he was also working with pretty big, let's say, investing cartels, so to speak. And he said that noticed that there is a problem, that you get the startup and they receive funding, and all of the sudden they become the smartest people in the world, and they sometimes are not very receptive towards guidance. So it's all nice and dandy. He was actually pretty vocative about, he's coming from Europe, and he was talking about American startups, that there everything works perfectly, everything is on the best track and everything will be fine, and they are almost ready. But he said that sometimes he just steps back. He even if he put his money on, he just decides that just quarreling with them is just not worth the money. So the question is, how do you guide them? How do you decide? And how do you have mechanisms to actually, like, you mentioned gap-based mentoring on the website. So the question is, how do you identify this gap? How do you then guide maybe in India it's different. Maybe people are humble all the way through.
No.
But
No.
in my experience, someone who suddenly gets a lot of money has a tendency or is in danger of feeling like he's the smartest person in the world. So how do you deal with that?
So, okay, there are two parts to this question. So, yes, we encounter first of all that when they start receiving support and they start receiving funding, they start feeling that he is or she is the smartest person in the world and stops listening to other people and so on. Yes, we encounter this, and there is no solution to the change in the attitude. Yeah, right, because it is very person specific and we have to deal with the situation. Now again, we deal with each situation differently because the situation is different. It's not again a formula. However, this is one part. Now second part, what happens is, the startup ecosystem in India or in the Middle East region, where I'm in Dubai right now and I'm
Mhm.
based in Dubai for the last 10 years. Startup ecosystem in the Middle East also and India also is quite small, in the sense that there are funds who are investing in startups, but generally the fund managers know each other in
Mhm.
the system. Even the startup founders know each other. So, socially or community wise, or
Mhm.
generally from the media and so on, or sometimes personally, they know each other. So, and they know the power or the authority that venture catalyst brings on table. The
Mhm.
startup founder knows. So what happens is, because of that, this feeling of suddenly he or she becoming the smartest person in the world reduces, because they know that everybody knows everybody. So today, if I see a change in attitude, okay, people talk to each other, and then the next round of funding, because as a startup you want to raise every 6 months or a year next round of funding, and higher valuation and higher amount of funding.
Mhm.
And then that if
The word
if it is
spreads.
not going very well, yeah, so deep inside his or her mind, they know this is for sure. We are still not Silicon Valley, where there are multiple funds and there are so many startup founders that if not from here, then from there I will get the funding.
Mhm.
It's not that big ecosystem still. It's still growing. So
Mhm.
this is the second one. Now I will come to gap based mentoring, the
Mhm.
question you asked.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if you see all my answers earlier, that I leave it to the startup founder. So what we do is we
Mhm.
go to the startup founder and say that you have a fantastic idea. You seem like a very visionary guy, very hardworking person. We feel like if we give you money, you will utilize it properly. Everything is good. Now you tell me that what are you missing? So if you are very good in technology, we don't have to come and teach you technology, but maybe you are missing HR skills. You don't
Or
know how to grow
marketing.
the
Or
company, how to recruit the right people, how to motivate them, how to structure ESOP for them,
Mhm.
right? ESOPs for them.
Mhm.
So there are so many things now. So if you are missing HR, what we do is we have industry experts within our community. So
Mhm.
we tag you to an industry expert or an HR expert, and he will mentor you. So this is what we call as gap-based mentoring. Now, if you say that I'm fine in HR, I'm fine in technology, however, I'm not good salesperson, because every techie is not a good sales. In fact, most of the techies are not good salespeople. So we have to imbibe the skills in them, or we have to tell them that okay, hire a good head of sales, hire a good, a person who can grow your business, who can build your brand, and so on. And we bring that person to him as a part of senior management or as a part of co-founder with a smaller equity. So all these
Mhm.
efforts again on a one-to-one basis keep going on, and that's what we call gap based mentoring. This is one. Secondly, during the video calls that I told you, during the curation process, we are already assessing. It's not that we fund, he's part of our system, and now we start thinking, oh, now he's missing this and so we already keep assessing. Okay, 1, 2, 3 is okay, 4 is missing. So now can we work on this 4? If we can work on this 4, there is a point in taking the startup into our umbrella, under our umbrella.
So you mentioned that techies are not good salespeople. Obviously, it's a generalization. I
No, it is a generalization. I'm trying to say that nobody has all the skills.
Yeah, but I wanted to ask you. So, if you were to give advice to startups based on your observation of what they're missing usually, like if you wanted to see a better preparation from the startup founders, what advice would you give them to where they could really brush up on average, obviously?
You mean the startup founders when they apply to us for the incubation
or for any funding? Because I think that your thinking is very wide, and with this incubator, integrated incubator, I personally, I'm very appealing to me, appealing. And but what I think that some general attitude towards investors or preparing your business plan is general. So we don't think that what you say applies only to India or Middle East. We believe it's a good idea for any investor to be prepared to answer this question. So don't think that we are asking specifically about the India market, but let's say we have people, especially young people, who have idea for a product. The question is like, what is it that they need to think as well, and they often forget.
Good question. I have to think.
I'm so proud of myself.
Oh,
I made you think.
With the risk of again generalizing the things.
It is always the distribution. We say it often here. It's always a distribution. There is never like a single answer in business. Like oh, this is always this. So there is always some generalization. So we and our audience are prepared that they will get answer which is, if it's true in 50% of cases, it's already all right. So let's agree to that.
Okay, I'll mention to you a couple of things here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Number one is I have seen a mindset in generally startup founders across the world, because I have a couple of, not many. I think I have 2 investments in Europe and 1 in Silicon Valley.
Mm-hmm.
So I have seen this across the startup founders, that there is too much focus on the need for funding. In the sense that I'm not undermining the need for funding and the funding that is required for a startup to grow. However, a lot of blame is put by most of the startup founders that, oh, I did not get that kind of funding at the right time, that's why I'm not successful today. Or if you do not fund me, then I will not be successful, otherwise I would have been very successful. So the blame is shifted to the investor, that you did not invest in me, otherwise I was supposed to be very successful, but because of your funding. So I see this mentality now. This mindset is, so the need of funding, as I said, is right. It is there. However, it is just a shift in mindset which is required, that the startup founder should ask himself or herself why this investor is investing in probably so many other startups and not in me. Why am I not getting, not only this investor, but why am I not getting funded when there are hundreds and thousands of startup founders who are getting funded? So let's go back to the brainstorming. Let's go back to the team and let's see what exactly the investors require that I'm not giving them.
On the other hand,
it is not a good financial model. Maybe I'm not exactly showing them how the returns or the global vision. For example, I'm giving them very narrow vision, or maybe I'm giving them something which is beyond the imagination of investor, and he is thinking or she is thinking that this is too good to be true, and it's not going to happen. So come back to reality. So either way, this is one part that too much focus on the lack of funding and blaming the person who did not fund or who will not fund you. This is one part. Secondly, I have seen another thing for a startup founder. A few startup founders are not good in numbers. Now, to be good in numbers for an investor is extremely good, because I'm investing numbers in you and I'm expecting some numbers from you, right? I see that startup founders are in love with their startup venture, are in love with their innovation, in love with their technology. Uh, they have to understand that why an investor is investing in a startup founder. Not because because I like your technology, I like your personality, I like your attitude. Everything is true, but at the end of the day, I want to make more money on my money by investing in your startup founder. I mean, everything boils down to that basic fact that I'm investing money in you because I want 3 times, 5 times, 100 times money after 2 years, 3 years from this investment. So being good in numbers and calculations, when you say that, oh, we will scale up globally, this is also a basic thing that always, oh, we will scale up globally. Now, what does that globally mean in number? What do you mean globally? There are 190 plus countries. So which country you are focusing on? How much is the market in that country? How much is your addressable market? How much you will get it? Now, how much is that impact on your cost structure and the profitability? Is it a cash positive or a cash negative scenario? When you are going to raise next round of funding, say after 6 months or 1 year, okay, what kind of valuation you are going to reach? I want to reach, say, 3x or 5x of valuation. Now, take that calculation backward and justify to me how that 3x will happen. That 3x will happen only when you achieve certain kind of revenue, certain kind of profitability. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So being very good and sharp on numbers to me is extremely important for a startup founder if I'm investing. So this is the second thing that comes to my mind. Yeah, if during the course of podcast, if I realize another one, I will come back to this question. But I think these two are extremely important for me, to be good with numbers and not focusing too much on receiving funding or not receiving funding.
This is something that we discussed with Artur. Is the difference between? I wonder your opinion. Like it's a pretty wild idea. There is a difference between startups and new businesses, and my personal feeling is I don't have such extensive experience. So I really would like to know your opinion and correct me if I'm wrong. Is that we are talking about the new businesses if they are mainly interested, in example, in getting new clients. Like I love the part of your incubation and integration of incubation is leading them. Okay, so this is your potential client. Try to work with them. The startup culture is like, okay, give me a funding and I will change the world, and this is the vision, and I will scale globally. The new business is more like, okay, I need this funding to be able to serve these clients, but the problem is like what you said, getting to clients. You are a new startup, you may have the best technology for making part A rotate 3 times faster, whatever. Now, good luck getting to Mercedes. I'll get my popcorn and watch you struggle. So I really love it, but I wonder, like, do you see this difference between the startup mentality, like, okay, give me funding and show off, and new business mentality, meaning, okay, this is the group of clients I need to get to. I need these funds to be ready and to get to them. How do you perceive?
So, going by your definition of startup, that you give me funding and I will look into what to do next, is not what I'm expecting, of course, from a startup founder.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing I wanted to mention to you. A difference between us and other incubators
Mm-hmm.
also is, other incubators mostly have cohorts. So they have a 3 months or 6 months program,
Mm-hmm.
incubation program. So they take you through steps, and after it's a course basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So after 3 months or 6 months, you are on your own, right?
That was the
We just
reason
touched
why
upon this aspect.
That's why I asked the first question, like, when do you let them go? And I had a feeling that there is a difference. Like, there is no this answer. Okay, so they
Yeah.
have 6 months to be ready, or they grow to 25.5% and then they go. So
The simple answer to this question is we never let them go. So yeah, we are with startup founders. Now we have created 3 unicorns in India and a
Wow.
number of sonicorns in India, and we are still with them. Now, of course, we exited from them, and so the journey is not. So what happens is, let me tell you, it is why it is not 3 months or a 6 months cohort program.
Mhm.
Is because we are with them together for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and so on. There are startup founders who create a startup and then it gets acquired by another company after 3 years, and then he is creating another startup. The first people that he will come for the funding for the second startup is us, because he knows that he got his first check and all this mentoring and guidance from us in the first one, and now he has exited. Now he's sitting on good funding because his startup was acquired. However, for the second one, whenever not only funding, if he requires some kind of mentoring, some kind of guidance, some kind of connections in business, he will come to us because he knows our authority in the market, or he knows how much we can help him or her, right? So it's so we never leave him, or we never leave the startup. Okay, that's actually the correct answer to this. And what was the second question?
I can't remember. I was so engaged in the
No, I
answer
think
to
this
this.
this was the question.
So let me while Marian thinks, let me ask another one.
Okay.
You did mention that you have 2 funds. One is kind of agnostic. One is fintech oriented, and you also have kind of quite a stringent selection process. Startups very often are recommended to well, it's basic marketing technique. Define your client persona, right? But I was recently attending a presentation by a startup that was, they had one website which they addressed to both their clients and their investors, and they were asking during their presentation, why don't you have two websites, one with a client experience and one with an investor experience? And they said, oh, we want our investors to be the same as our clients. And I thought it was a bit weird because it's normally these two groups of people have very different needs, very different mentalities, and startups, I think, should, the same as they create their startup persona, they should create their investor persona and look for a specific kind of investor to provide them with the funding, but also with the guidance. Do you think that's applicable from your experience?
Yes, definitely. An investor has completely different personality, completely different requirements than a customer. I don't know which startup presented to you this, but I would not approve this at all, because it doesn't match. Because I'm an investor now. For example, let's take the automobile startup. I'm an investor, but I cannot be your customer for automobile in India. I'm staying in Dubai, but I'm still your investor, right? And then as an investor, I could be a fund manager. So my core business is to manage my fund, invest in the right opportunities, and get good return for my investors, right? So I cannot be your customer, and vice versa. Every customer is not a startup investor. I
In
think
this particular case, the startup was heavily invested, heavily into blockchain and NFTs, and basically, I think personally that was an excuse because the presentation was very heavy on technology, and they didn't really understand that an investor might not necessarily understand blockchain and NFT technology in order to analyze the business part of the proposition. So
But
they
also
wanted, it was almost an excuse for them to say, oh, we want crypto specialists to invest in our business, and that's our
I think
investment.
it's the specificity
Can I
of the
ask you a
market,
question?
no?
Certainly.
Sure.
Sorry,
But-
Marian, you are saying something.
If you have a question, please go. I was just keeping
So
it
can I
also.
ask you a question, Arthur?
Of course.
out of entire population who invests in cryptos and NFTs, how much percentage understands cryptos and NFTs from the investors?
From the conference that I attended a few days ago, I would say that in the companies, a lot of people understand it because they specifically they form almost a niche kind of group. The people who invest into the market, like invest in cryptocurrencies and NFTs, no one.
Exactly. Most of the people are investing in Bitcoin because their friend invested without understanding. Most of the people are buying this chimpanzee with goggles in NFTs because their friend did it. They don't understand the game. They don't understand the long-term impact of everything that they are doing. Now let me ask you another question. Okay, how many customers of crypto and NFT based startups understand crypto and NFT?
I would guess also near zero.
Very, very, very poor percentage of population understands this. So now the startup in question, and I don't want to be very specific about whoever or whichever that startup you're talking about. So you are dealing with two persona. You are explaining to both of them something which both of them don't understand.
And most of them don't
Now,
care
you
about
will
it.
only create confusion, nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right or wrong?
No, absolutely, and also I think if you mentioned automobile startups, they obviously have to look for investors that are interested in automobile industry. They probably wouldn't go to a fintech investor. So this is what I meant by creating your investor persona. You cannot just go to anybody with money and hope that they will understand what you're talking about. You have to find a specific investor who is investing in the in the sector, in the particular type of ideas, but also personality, right? Because you have to kind of find a match in the similar temperament, worldview, that kind of thing.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
On the other hand, it's like you have this investors who just come to angel, the investment groups, and they hope that there will be someone who knows. It's like your investors in your group. Like, do they really know about what they invest in, or they trust you to select the sound, let's say, products and sound startups?
No.
Like,
So
how does it
the
work?
individual angel investors who are investing directly in the startup as a syndication on our platform, they do know the startup. They talk to the startup founder. So how the process happens is after the investment committee approves that this startup is to be funded and incubated and mentored and so on, we organize the startup video pitch calls with the community that we have. Now, the community is much more than, say, 1,000 people. So any call is attended by, say, 100, people based on their convenience and time. Each startup founder that our investment committee approves uh, does a pitch call for 3 or 4 times in different time zones. So one of the pitch calls is at 12 midnight India time, which is good for the US and Canada investor because we have some community there as well. So one call is probably 6 a.m. India time because it is good for another and so on. So 3 or 4 calls happen. Now then what happens is the pitch call is probably half an hour per startup. So 20 minutes of pitch or 15 minutes of pitch and 10 to 15 minutes of question answers. Now, all the investors don't get opportunity to ask questions and they just heard the pitch. So they have to think before they ask questions. So after a week or so, we organize another call. It is called deep dive call, wherein we give entire floor to the startup founder for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, and there is no pitching on this call. We say that you heard about this startup X last week, and now we have a deep dive call. The call starts with questions and answers. It's a video call again. There are slides, and there is a startup founder answering the questions of all the individual angel investors. And after the deep dive call, whoever is interested, it's an online process, and they can invest. So they are fully aware of, and they are given all the material like the pitch deck or the financial plan or the business plan. Everything is given to them by a standard email format that we have. It's quite a long email and a few attachments. It's a standard templates for everybody. So so this is also given, so they are completely aware of. Not only this, every 3 months after they invest, we have a follow-up review call with them. So we organize a video call of the same startup X after 3 months or after 4 months, and say that, oh, there are some review updates, and let's have a call. So the startup founder prepares a few slides about the review updates. Whoever has invested comes on that call, and they ask again question. This call goes on for an hour and a half again. So they are aware of. In this, now coming back to your customer versus investor question also, in this review call, the startup founder says that, okay, now I have reached this stage, right? And I'm searching for a business connection in this company or this sector or this market or this geography on the review update call itself. And now it is up to an angel investor or an individual investor, if he has his association, his community, his friend, or his business relationship in that sector, that geography, that company, he can connect directly with the startup founder. But there is no compulsion on him. There is no pressure on any of the investors. But the community generally helps, because I invested in this startup. Why not? If something good happens with my startup founder and all the investors that have co-invested with me. Now, this is the model for the angel investors who are coming to the syndication platform and investing individually. Now, of course, when they invest in a regulated fund, we do not go so you have a fund manager, and then you have a fund investment committee and advisory board and mentoring board. So it's a different structure. So here we don't go back to the investors to every time present the startup. Then here the investors are trusting the business acumen and investment acumen of the investment committee, the fund manager, and the advisory board. And they are basically, we invest ourselves. Here also, every 3 months, we give them an update report about how many startups we invested. And now, what is the progress of each startup. Maybe a follow-on round happened from some external fund or an investor. So we update them for all the startups together.
I have a question, because I like the model of this integrated startup is going to and fro and helping the startup. Like, I think more than 90% of startups, they actually fail to take off on average. Like, what is the success rate of your startup, given this extra boost of getting to client and like this really stringent selection process? Like, what's the success rate of the startups in your model?
You will be surprised. Our success rate is more than 90%. The opposite of what you said.
I'm not surprised.
Because what has happened, you have to understand what has happened is we have already filtered out 99.5%. Now, this is the cream of 0.5% who applied to us. And after doing all this, if they are not successful and we are not successful, I think we should close down the business. Okay. So yeah, our success rate, and it is surprising to most of other incubators and funds, because nobody has probably achieved it. But our success rate is more than 90% of the starters. And that's why we grew very fast in last, it's been only 5.5 years since we started. We started in 2016, 6 years probably. But we grew to this level.
And when you mentioned that you did launch a couple of unicorns, I'm just wondering, when they came to you, if you remember that, are these businesses that you kind of from the start you see, oh, these guys are going to be big, and you get that feeling, or are they? Is it more kind of that they start to shine at some part of the process where the customers start biting, the market is favorable? Do they have something from the start, or do they grow that unicorn nature?
No, they have always something from the start. They don't go. They grow further but they always have that spark from the start. What happens is unicorn is the concept of unicorn is very glamorized. It is it's like sounds super sexy, I'm a unicorn. But to me, the value that a $900 million startup has created is almost equal to a $1 billion who has created. So we cannot tell you that which one is unicorn and which one is not. Okay, but we know that this startup will be successful. Now, success might be $100 million valuation and $200 million valuation, not $1 billion valuation for us, because we are going at idea stage. This is one thing that you have to understand. But the at idea stage, we are going at a very low valuation. So tomorrow, if the startup is a $50 million startup, right, after 2 3 years, we have done our multiple already, you know. So, but to answer your question, there is always a spark. In fact, the other things happen. So, for example, there are good startups, not in our case particularly, but generally there are good startups, good startup founders, and then COVID hit. So when pandemic hit, they faced those challenges which neither we thought of, neither they thought of, nobody thought of, right? And then here, what happened is it actually negatively affected their growth. A couple of startups probably not closed down, but basically, reduced the size and so on, and it affected our investments also. But then things like this, now the last 6 months, the rumors of war may break out, the international war may. So these kind of rumors don't help the startups to grow, because then people go back to their shell and they are not ready to support and take that risk with the startup founder. We have been investing, but I'm talking about generally the mindset in the market. So because of this, the reverse has happened. So the startup founder was good, the startup is good. However, something happened, which is, we call it in legal language, force majeure. And something happened, and because of that, we thought of higher thing, but he or she could not achieve. This has happened.
You mentioned the crisis, and I wonder, because we had this discussion with Yuchen Chan, who was the investor that we spoke with, and we spoke how important is resilience at the startup level. And we let's say in our work we help build resilience companies. Our motto is resilience of operations worth having. So I wonder how much the resilience is important for startup investors, for startups, because it's a bit of a trade-off. It's where you go, headlong and you grow, but you cut some corners, and your growth may not be as resilient, or you build, let's say, resilience, but maybe at the expense of some of the growth achievable, because you want to have, I don't know, spend more time training your people, or introducing some internal processes. Then you could spend this energy or money on I don't know, marketing. So the question is, how do you, with your success rate, how do you perceive resilience? Is it like a nice have, must have, or like you have it well higher?
Must have. I think resilience in a startup founder, having it or not having it, defines a lot about the success. So
and
resilience,
the resilience of
yeah,
operations of the startup itself, because the
yeah,
personal resilience is one thing, but the operational resilience is say, resilience. I think as a person, you have or you don't have, you had your lifetime of experiences which led to resilience. I don't think it's something that you can achieve in a year of even the best mentoring or coaching. I may be wrong. We need to ask some psychologist one day. But in my personal experience, it's resilience comes from the lifetime of experience. The resilience in the company, it can be developed. So I see these two a bit too different.
yes, resilience in the company can be developed, and who will develop that? The startup
It
founder.
has to be
It has to be
The founder. I, as an investor, cannot go from outside and develop resilience in his company. He has to develop it. Now, why a startup founder will develop resilience in his company or her company? If he or she himself or herself is resilient in his or her life. So I cannot develop something for the company or operations if that is not inside me.
But that is something that you can mentor into the founder, right?
I can think of just one very well-known company where the investor or the owner is very resilient man, and yet the operations that he creates, they don't sound that resilient.
Very specific case you're talking about.
Yeah, but yes, it is a specific case, but it's a pretty well known right now.
I know what you're talking about.
I think everybody does.
it's funny that you can be as vague and like pretty much 99%.
No points for guessing.
Yeah, okay, no, but it answers. But okay, so I have another question.
So whatever we are talking here is always at the risk of generalization, right?
Yes, of course. Yes, it's always it's always a distribution.
So this is my personal opinion that resilience in operations is extremely important. And generally, the startup founder, if in his life or her life, he or she is not resilient, it's difficult to bring the resilience in the operation.
I agree.
If the other way is possible.
Yes.
I am very resilient in my life, but I could not bring the resilience in the operations. This is the case you are talking about. Is possible.
Yes.
Yeah.
However, I'm not resilient in my life, and I'm bringing resilience to the operations is impossible, because what is not in me, I cannot bring it. And your question, Arthur,
but it's a commodity as well, isn't it? It's like you realize that you are not resilient. You can like with I'm not a great salesperson. I'm a terrible salesperson myself. But I can get someone who will do the sales. I think resilience is also a commodity. I don't fully agree. Resilience can be built by proper application of the contractor or employees. It's like if I have a very resilient, I don't know, co-founder or I don't know, COO, I can, if I realize the importance of resilience and I realize I might like. However, how many people not resilient get to the level where they get funded by you? You sift out 99.5%. I guess the guys who have the mental power to stay in the process and survive all of that, they are already resilient.
Yes, they are already resilient. Exactly. They are already resilient. So again, if they are resilient, there is a hope that they will bring that resilience to the operation. There is a hope. They may or they may not, or they may bring from outside. However, now, for example, you are saying that I'm not saying you're saying that you are not a good salesperson. I don't agree with that. But let's say you are not a good salesperson and you are a startup founder. Okay. Then you say that, okay, I'm not a good salesperson. Let me bring another good salesperson so that my sales growth marketing can be taken care of. Now, this thought comes from where, Marian? This thought comes from
experience,
the need for resilience, which I cannot fulfill myself. Now, to start all this is the thought coming to your mind that there is a need for resilience. Now, somebody who is not resilient in his or her life will not bring that thought to the business also, that he will always say, oh, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm okay. Why should I take extra efforts and bring another person and so on?
Point taken. Yes, I have to agree. I have no choice. I have one last question. My question again. I know.
Yeah.
I would like to ask about, I would say, the dangers, like on different stages, because I love that you have this long process and you are not leaving the incubators, and it gives you pretty unique insight into their lives. It's not like you watch them for, I don't know, it's 2-3 months and you let them go. Like, from your experience, like what are the critical moments? It's where the startups they face the greatest challenges or dangers. Well, we have, let's say, our own thoughts on it, but I really wonder, like, at the risk of generalization, of course, but like, where are the moments where the things that operated smoothly suddenly, there is some rattling, some, cogs are, getting out, there are sparks. What are the danger moments for during this whole journey?
The first danger moment is startup founder breaking down because of a failure. So because of a rejection, or he gets tired of the rejections, because rejections is a part of life. Startup world is not that fancy, which the outside world thinks. It's a very cruel world for a startup founder. It's not going to be easy. I'll tell you another thing also. This is one basically breaking down of the startup founder, and probably persistence, or the feeling of having it enough. Having it enough is on both sides. So
Mm-hmm.
having enough of rejections, and now enough of it, uh, and having enough of growth. So there is also a feeling in startup founders, oh, I'm already now $100 million company. I started 3 years back. I see this after going to a level. They have this feeling that I have grown too much, like I have achieved what I wanted to achieve. Now now Kalas, let me exit, or let me take a back seat, and the other people drive the business. So this also comes much earlier than uh, you know going to the full potential of the business. So these are a couple of things that I feel are very important. Not breaking down with rejections and failures, and keep
Mm-hmm.
doing it. Of course, learning from it.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not breaking your head on the same wall again and again, but learning from it. And at the second is having that feeling of, oh, I have, which I think at the start of the call we said that he becomes, or she becomes, the smartest person in the world. So that is one thing that is a big danger for a startup business. The moment you have that attitude, everything starts crumbling down in no time.
From our
I think
experience,
this is
no, one confirmation. In our experience, there is this breaking point when the startups grow beyond, I don't know, at the risk of generalization, 30, 50 people, when it's not enough that people, the founders can run the business, they need to delegate it to others. How do you perceive this moment of mm, moving from doing stuff by the founders who know well what they are doing into delegating stuff? Is it a problem in your experience, or is it something that usually goes smooth?
No, it is a problem. You are right. It is a problem because, again, the startup founder, as I mentioned earlier, somewhere in the call, on the podcast, that the startup founder is always in love with what he has innovated, what he has
Mm-hmm.
created, what technology she has built.
Mm-hmm.
Always in love, and this love, this emotional connect, uh, you know, uh, doesn't allow the startup founder to delegate certain tasks which are to be delegated. But then, a time comes when you're not supposed to do what you have been doing to reach this stage. So now you have to. So basically, you will go to the next step only if the people from down will push you up. Now there have to be people who will say that, don't worry, I will take care of your job. You go to the next step now. But this also, now this thing can come from mentoring. So sometimes this is where, like I you were saying that some things can come from mentoring, and I kept on saying no, it has to be internal for the startup founder. But this thing can come from mentoring. This thing can, sitting down together with the startup founder, explaining to him or her, and then they understand. So, but yeah, this is also a danger. You're right, I agree.
I think this kind of brings this whole into perspective, because founders really, any founder who listen to this episode will get a lot of practical insight, kind of, because it was a very serious discussion. I think, to finish a bit on a lighter note, I did hear you speak once at an event, and I remember you mentioned a story where one kind of pitch came to you, and the guy was making ice cream cones,
Yeah.
and you asked him what was his potential customer base, and he said it's the whole world, because everyone eats ice cream.
Yeah, he said he has 8 billion potential customers. Those days it was 7 billion. So he said, I think he said 7.5 billion people. They're his potential customers, which is true.
Yeah.
I mean, babies don't eat ice cream, and a lot of old people are diabetic. So we have to, but but it was very funny.
It's this kind of mentality that I think is the dreamer one. Thank you very much for sharing these experiences with us. If people want to, obviously you already get 1,500 pitches every month, but if you wanted to get a few more, or people wanted to reach out and get a bit more of your wisdom, what's the best way to reach you and contact you?
I think the best way is to reach me on LinkedIn. I'm very frequent on LinkedIn. Of course, on LinkedIn also, I have a huge backlog of things, but that's the only way we get it. And before we end, I would also like to say that we also produce a TV show, reality show in India. It is called Horses Table, Jojita Vai Sikandar. Jojita Vai Sikandar means winner takes it all. It is similar to Shark Tank or Dragon's Den. The show is in Hindi. It comes on national news channel in Hindi, in the national language of India. And we produced our four seasons. And if you have some audience from India, apart from so this is my personal venture with other, so this is not related to VentureCatalysts. However, if somebody wants to come on the show, there is a curation process for the show. We need another podcast for how do we curate startups for the show. But that's but if somebody is in from India who is in your audience and can speak Hindi, understand Hindi, we welcome him on the show as well.
We will link to it in the description of this episode for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll put all the links. So look below if you're on YouTube or everything will be provided. Again, thank you very much for spending the time with us and sharing this knowledge. It's been very useful to us, and let's hope it's of use to someone else as well.
Thank you for listening.
We sincerely recommend you check out Mandar's content on LinkedIn, as well as have a look at VentureCatalysts, India's first integrated incubator. As usual, the link to the reference will be available to the notes in the episode.
Also, don't miss the next one, where we'll be discussing the franchise business model and how it relies on business process frameworks with Bob Volp, managing partner at Volp Consulting and Accounting Services.
Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform or visit bdr.show to find out more about future episodes and guests. You can also check out cognition.llc for more information on Cognition Shared Solutions, our services, and other events hosted by us.
For now, it's thank you from myself, your friendly neighborhood data guy, Dr. Marian, and my co-host, Artur.
Thank you.